Chapter 1, Setting the Scene. I have been a writer, as far as I'm concerned, and a reader practically all of my life. Amongst my earliest memories, I can see myself sitting at the foot of the very steep flight of stairs in the house in which I was born. Before me is the very large front door, and in the centre of that, our letterbox. And I am vigilant and expectant, and before long, through the letterbox, comes the Beano. But not the shiny, garish beast we know today. My beautiful assistant will bring one forward. This is 60 years ago, and the colours are beautiful. On the front page is Biffo the Bear, and I am entranced by Biffo the Bear. An upright Bruin who wears red shorts and associates with a lad called Buster, who appears to be an oversized baby in an undersized beret. Thank you. But Biffo the Bear will go on to be the first in a line of bears I feel life will not treat fairly. He will eventually be replaced by the more popular Dennis the Menace, and after that be faded off completely. Just as Jeremy the Bear, who would drive a train and wear a pillbox hat on the front of the Sugar Puffs box, would be eventually replaced by the tiresome Honey Monster, or whatever his bloody name is. And Winnie the Pooh would be saddled with a saccharine, grotesque voice by Walt Disney, and Rupert Bear would be saddled with a grotesque, saccharine theme tune when he eventually makes his television debut. But worst of all, Sooty, saddled with no voice, no face, no personality, a mere foil for the infinitely superior Sweep. But I do realise talking about bears does not constitute a TED talk, so back to the foot of our stairs, where I am sat wide-eyed with my Beano, and I'm 3 years old and as yet unable to read, but I am unstoppable. In my memory there are no word balloons, so I make up the story, but am I inventing something out of crystal air, or am I inferring a story from the picture clues given? To me that's an interesting distinction. I start school at 5, by which time I can already read, so I'm sent to the class above to practice this art whilst my classmates learn the rudiments. Nobody can recall teaching me to read, but somebody must have done. I don't say this to present myself as some kind of accelerated child, because I really wasn't. The recipe for a Mr Todd calls for a mere pinch of academic intelligence and perhaps a soup song of practical intelligence, but to my great joy it does include a great big jug full of emotional intelligence, and I'm ever thankful for that, because emotional intelligence I feel is the ingredient which enables a writer to truly live and leap from the page. I can also swim when I start school, and it transpires that this and reading will be my only accomplishments in education. I have my moments, but what a teacher once described as my oblique take on life will preclude any further academic success. That and my circumstances as a rather snooty headmaster decides it's really not going to be fruitful. Me taking 11 plus, as my father is a coalman and we live in a house attached to a butcher's that we rent, and we will soon upgrade for a council house. By the time I'm 29, I'll have had 35 jobs. I do have another brush with adult education, but this doesn't go well either, and it soon dawns on me that my father's joke that the only way I will pass any exams is to keep going down the corridor is actually true. And then one day, meeting a friend in a pub, he is late and comes down the stairs looking rather sheepish, saying, actually I'm upstairs rehearsing a play called Tiger at the Gates, which I've never heard of, by a French writer called Jean Giraudoux. I go up with him and watch them, and they seem to be having such fun. And then they ask me to take a small part, which I say no to. But they are desperate and they press their case, and eventually I agree. And I have been handicapped by a crippling shyness my entire life, and so I go home cursing myself and grimly rehearse my 10 lines, fearing opening night and fearing the worst. But when opening night rolls round and I take the stage, something strange happens. My imagination, which has grown fat and strong on a diet of novels and comics devours me. And in my mind, I really am sat at the gates of Troy. I can act. Jubilatum. Chapter 2, finding my medium. Medium, the intervening substance through which sensory impressions are conveyed or physical forces are transmitted. I am working class, not that I care. To me, class is simply where you came from, like nationality, and like nationality you can't change it, and neither does it matter. But it does mean up until this point, theatre had never really been part of my life. I do remember a school trip to an ancient church to see a play about Henry II, scenes from which live with me to this day. And I remember someone taking me to see Wind in the Willows. Well, it would have been Toad of Toad Hall, but imagine that. Kenneth Graham's fantastic novel, brought to the stage by the man who wrote Winnie the Pooh. Couldn't really lose, could it really? And I remember a song in that so pleased me, I can't look at a bird to this day without wondering what his opinion on rivers and tides are. Through the stage, my life has taken on a completely different colour. I was 29 by this point, and obviously I felt too old for drama school, and anyway I had no clue as to how I would fund that, so I simply auditioned for anything and everything, learning my craft before people. I then began to go and watch other people perform. Well, in truth, I'd already seen amateur plays on many occasions, but I tentatively went to professional theatre, which for me was very scary. I would imagine they'd put their hand on my shoulder and say, "Nice try, mate, you look like us, but I can still smell it on you." Eventually I would go to professional theatre further afield, and a very exciting moment for me. It's said that imagination, like a muscle, will increase with exercise. And in spite of my walking 10 to 13 miles a day in my job as a postman, through the medium of theatre, my imagination did very quickly eclipse my legs. And it also, theatre became a balm for my confidence, eventually capturing my fears and dreads, caging them, and never quite taking them away, but they're in the process of being rehabilitated. I was asked to stage a mummers play at Salmston Grange, so I went to the library and found the only mummers scripts in the whole of Kent were on loan and had been for over a year. So knowing the rudiments of a mummers play, I simply wrote one. The cast were intrigued, the audience were thrilled, and a lady who was down from Stockport asked me for a copy that she might use it at home in a class she was giving. Now, having written poems and short stories, bits of prose, and even attempting a few novels over the years, more or less since I was born, I now felt I had found my medium. I would go on to write many short stories and quite a slew of full-length plays, which I did firstly all over Thanet, then eventually taken them out of Thanet to around Kent, and now I've taken them around England to fairly small audiences. But if you write plays, I said this to someone earlier, if you're not known and your play isn't known, everybody wants new writing, but can anyone remember that the last time they went to see a play they'd never heard of by someone they'd never heard of and hadn't read about in the newspaper? I play to the hardcore, I tell you. And it's a medium and an area which for me is thrilling, because the grammar pedants, those that would put a lid on expression because of a misplaced comma or apostrophe, have no truck here. Here, our green Elysian fields that a beast like me can run free in. Chapter 3, Mr Todd's 10 Commandments of Playwriting. 1, do not fear the blank page. Just dive in, write anything, write rubbish. You may strike something, you might come across something, you can always edit. Nobody sees anything you don't show to them. Also talk to people and read, watch plays, watch telly, listen to the radio. Do not stew in your own head. John Mayall, a great blues guitarist and songwriter, said that if no song ever comes to mind and he wants a song, he'll pick a song he really loves and just copy it. In half an hour he said, I've forgotten what song I've copied and my song has a life of its own. People have done this with plays since time immemorial. It's not wrong to do this. Shakespeare did it. 2, use your actors. Try to imagine what it'd be like to be in your play. If a part is by necessity small, imagine doubling up that actor so he won't sit around for 2 minutes work. Maybe write another part, sympathy for that reason. 3, count your lines. I make a list of my characters and I count every line they have so that every actor gets their moment and every character gets their moment. And if there are 2 or maybe 3 characters that have less lines, I can then write another play, another scene rather, only involving those characters, which will be totally extraneous to the story and give the audience a bit of a rest from whatever it is these plays are about. Weave in more than one storyline. I mean, if you're writing a play about the breakup of a marriage or something, weave in another story about how the neighbour's worried about her chickens because they're dying of an unknown disease, or the lad down the road is doing odd jobs to raise money to buy a rare LP he's seen in a record shop. It just gives the play depth. Make lists of lines you would like your characters to say, or maybe phrases that you would like them to say, because in drama, a turn of phrase is everything. It's all you really have to impart information. I mean, I saw a film on telly a couple of days ago in which Gene Hackman's character said to Clint Eastwood's character, "You would be William Money out of Missouri." And instantly, I got a vision of a great, sparsely peopled, dusty continent, just from one line. 6. This is slightly censorious, but don't try to be edgy by introducing sex or swearing. If your play needs both of those things, absolutely fine, but if it's gratuitous, you will get a few tittering people, but I think grown-ups will soon see through what's going on there. If you want to make a moral point or a political point, don't proselytise or whack people over the head with it. As an example, in a play I wrote once, if I'm casting and the character is an old lady, you don't have to be an old lady to play this part. You don't even have to be female. It's whoever suits the part. 8, don't worry about genres or convention. A phrase like Brechtian only came into existence because Brecht had his own vision on how to stage or write a play. 9, watch other people's plays. Never, 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 never feel you cannot learn from other people. And the point also I'm trying to make here is that communication is all we have in life. It's all we have with each other, and it is as serious as your life. So use it. 10, have fun.